A young man stands at a window in the blue hour, when the sun is gone but the dark hasn't won yet. The street below him is emptying. He is leaning on the sill, watching one particular doorway, and he is telling himself he is only watching. You know this moment. You have stood at your own version of this window. The choice you haven't made yet, but already know you're going to make. He doesn't know that 3 streets over an old man is writing him down. The old man sits at a low table with a lamp and a stack of words he has been collecting his whole life. He is a king. He has more gold than he can count, more wives than he can name, and a reputation that has crossed deserts. But tonight he is not thinking about any of that. He is thinking about a boy, his own son maybe, or yours. And he is doing the thing every parent does when they realize they will not always be in the room. He is trying to pack a lifetime into sentences short enough to remember. The Hebrew word for what he is writing is mashal. We translate it proverb, which sounds quaint, like something cross-stitched on a pillow. But mashal comes from a root that means to rule, to have mastery. A proverb is not a cute saying. It is a short sentence built to master a large truth. It is wisdom you can carry in your pocket and pull out at 2 in the morning when everything is falling apart, and you cannot remember a single sermon. His name is Solomon, and before he writes a single rule about money or anger or friendship, he tells you what the whole book is for. He says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. In Hebrew, yirat wh, not the fear that makes you run, but the fear that makes you stop. Reverent awe. The understanding that there is someone bigger than you, and that wisdom starts the moment you admit it. Now here is what I need you to hold on to, because we are going to come back to it. Solomon will write one line that towers over all the others. He will say, guard your heart above everything else, because everything you do flows out of it. And then, the wisest man who ever lived, he will stop guarding his own. His story does not end the way a wisdom book is supposed to end. We will get to how, but not yet. This is not a list of fortune cookie sayings. This is not a book of religious rules for people who like rules. This is not farming advice for people who died 3,000 years ago. This is a father's voice leaning down close saying, I won't always be here, so let me give you everything I know. There are over 900 of these sentences in the book of Proverbs. We are going to walk through 40 of the sharpest. Not as a list, as a journey through the rooms of your actual life, your words, your temper, your money, your pride, the people you let close, and finally the one room that decides all the others, your heart. So pull up a stool next to the old king's lamp. He has been waiting 3,000 years to tell you this. Let me tell you how famous this man's wisdom became. There was a queen far to the south in a kingdom called Sheba, modern Yemen, most likely 1,000 miles of desert away. She heard stories about an Israelite king who could answer any question, and she did not believe them. So she loaded camels with gold and spices and hard questions, and she crossed that desert to test him herself. The Bible says she asked him everything that was in her heart, and when he answered all of it, there was no more spirit left in her. She was breathless. She said the half had not been told. You want to know if this is just biblical bragging? Listen to the historians. Josephus, the Jewish historian writing around the year 90, recorded that Solomon's wisdom surpassed the ancients and even the famous wise men of Egypt, and that he composed thousands of books of parables. People outside the Bible wrote this man down. The legend was real, and the most famous moment of all came from 2 desperate women. 2 mothers, 1 living baby, both claiming him. No witnesses, no evidence, just 2 voices screaming over a child. And Solomon says, fine, bring me a sword and cut the baby in 2 halves for each of you. One woman says yes, divide him. The other woman breaks. She says no, give him to her, just don't kill him. And Solomon points at the one who would rather lose her son than see him die, and he says, that one. That's the mother. The whole nation heard about it, because they realized the king didn't just have knowledge, he had chokmah. That word matters. Chokmah is the Hebrew word for wisdom, and it does not mean book smart. It is the same word used for the craftsmen who built the tabernacle with their hands. Chokmah is skill. Wisdom in the Bible is not how much you know. It is how well you live. It is knowing what to do with what you know. So let's start living it. Lesson 1 comes out of the loudest room in your life, your mouth. Solomon says a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Think about the last fight you had. Think about the exact moment it could have gone either way, and then somebody chose the sharp word instead of the soft one. He's telling you the temperature of a room is set by the person willing to lower their voice first. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2, and it is the one that should stop you cold. Death and life, he says, are in the power of the tongue. Not influence, not mood, death and life. The words you spoke over your kids this morning are still echoing inside them tonight. The thing you said to your spouse in the kitchen is doing its work right now, for life or for death. He is telling you that you are holding a power you keep treating like it's nothing. Lesson 3. Reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Same mouth, two completely different weapons. You get to choose which one you're carrying into every conversation. Here's what most people miss. Solomon's 4th lesson on the tongue isn't about talking at all. It's about silence. Even a fool, he says, is thought-wise when he keeps his mouth shut. Hear that again. You don't have to win every argument. Sometimes the wisest thing in the room is the sentence you decide not to say. That's lesson 4, and lesson 5 makes it beautiful. A word fitly spoken, he says, is like apples of gold in settings of silver. The right word, at the right moment, to the right person. It's not just helpful, it's a work of art. You have given people gifts they're still carrying years later, and you don't even remember saying them. So that's the mouth. 5 lessons, 1 room. But there is a room right next to it, and the door between them is always open. Because the words you regret almost always come from the same place. Your temper, Solomon writes. And this one should rearrange how you measure strength. Better to be slow to anger than to be a mighty warrior, and better to rule your own spirit than to take a city. Sit with that. He is saying the man who keeps his cool in traffic has done something harder than a general who conquers a capital. That's lesson 6, real power isn't loud. Lesson 7, a fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man quietly holds it back. Notice he doesn't say the wise man doesn't feel it. He feels every bit of it. He just doesn't hand the microphone to it. Lesson 8 goes even further. Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but a quick temper exalts foolishness. Your fuse length is a measurement of your wisdom. The shorter it is, the more it's telling on you. And then lesson 9, and this is the image that haunts me. A man without self-control, Solomon says, is like a city whose walls are broken down. Picture that an ancient city without walls is not a city. It is a buffet. Anything can walk in and take whatever it wants. Fear, lust, rage, addiction, despair. Because there is no gate, no guard, nothing to say, not here, not tonight. When you lose control of yourself, you tear down your own walls, and then wonder why you keep getting robbed. Lesson 10 brings the 2 rooms together. Whoever guards his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. 10 lessons in, and watch the pattern already forming. The mouth and the temper, the walls and the gate. Solomon keeps circling back to one idea, that the life you build on the outside is decided by what you're willing to govern on the inside. Hold that thought, because he is about to take it into rooms you don't talk about in church. Let me pull the camera back for just a second. 10 lessons in and you can already feel what Solomon is doing. He hasn't handed you 10 separate rules. He's handed you one idea 10 times from 10 angles, that the size of your life gets decided in the small, quiet places nobody else can see. Your mouth, your fuse, your walls. If even one of these has put words to something you've been feeling and couldn't name, then stay with me, because the next 30 are sharper, and I'd hate for you to miss the one with your name on it. That's really why people keep this kind of thing close, not to collect verses, to have the right one waiting when the hard night comes. And somewhere in these 10, one already pricked you a little, you know the one. Keep its name in the back of your mind. I'm going to ask you about it before we're done, and I actually want to hear it, because so far we've only walked through the rooms inside you. Now Solomon opens the front door, and steps out into your money, your reputation, and the people you let stand closest to you. And this is where wisdom stops being comfortable. So Solomon walks outside, and the first place he stops might surprise you. He kneels down in the dirt and points at a bug. "Go to the ant," he says. "You sluggard, watch her and get wise. She has no commander, no overseer, no boss standing over her, and yet she gathers her food in summer and stores up for the winter she knows is coming." That's lesson 11, and it's brutal in its simplicity. The ant doesn't need to be told. She just sees the cold coming and gets to work. Solomon is asking you a quiet question. What season are you in right now? And are you preparing for the next one, or pretending it won't arrive? Lesson 12. Wealth gained in a hurry, he says, dwindles away, but whoever gathers little by little makes it grow. Every generation has to relearn this. The lottery ticket, the get-rich-quick scheme, the thing that promises everything overnight. Solomon watched it fail 3,000 years ago. Money built fast tends to leave fast. Money built slow tends to stay. There are no shortcuts to a harvest. And then lesson 13, and this one has put more people in chains than any prison ever built. The rich rules over the poor, he says, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Let that sink in. He's not making a moral judgment about debt. He's describing a power transfer. The moment you owe someone, a piece of your freedom now belongs to them. Solomon is begging you to feel how heavy that word is. Slave. He chose it on purpose. But here's the part nobody tells you about Solomon and money. He is not anti-wealth. The richest man in the world is not telling you to be poor. Lesson 14. One person gives freely and grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers. Want the open hand, he says, ends up fuller than the clenched fist. That's not how the math is supposed to work. But Solomon swears it's true. Lesson 15 ties the whole money room together. Whoever works his land will have plenty of bread, but whoever chases fantasies has no sense. Do the real thing in front of you. The unglamorous, ordinary, faithful work. That's the field that actually feeds you. Now watch what happens next, because Solomon stands up from the dirt, and his face changes. He's about to walk into the most dangerous room in the whole house. And it's not the one you'd expect. It's not greed, it's not lust, it's the quiet sin that wears a suit and calls itself confidence, pride. Lesson 16 is maybe the most famous sentence he ever wrote. Pride goes before destruction, he says, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Notice the order. The pride comes first. Always. By the time the fall arrives, the real damage was done years earlier, in the slow swelling of a heart that stopped thinking it needed anyone, including God. Here is where Solomon's whole foundation shows through, the thing he called Yirat, YHWH, the fear of the Lord. Pride is simply what happens when that reverence drains out of a person. You stop standing in awe of someone bigger than you, and the only thing left to worship is yourself. Lesson 17. With the humble, he says, is wisdom. Did you catch that? He doesn't say wisdom produces humility. He says humility is where wisdom comes to live. The proud man can't learn anything, because he already knows everything. The humble man is still teachable at 80. Lesson 18. And this one will sting if you've spent any time on a phone lately. Let another praise you, Solomon says, and not your own mouth, a stranger, and not your own lips. He's describing the entire architecture of modern self-promotion 3,000 years early. The wise don't announce their own goodness, they let it be discovered. And lesson 19 lands the warning. A man's pride will bring him low, but the lowly in spirit will gain honor. It's a complete inversion of how the world keeps score. The ones grasping for the high seat get pulled down. The ones who took the low seat get lifted up. Stay with me, because Solomon is about to show you the one force on earth strong enough to keep a proud heart honest. Other people, the right ones. Lesson 20 might be the most quoted proverb of all. Iron sharpens iron, he says, and one man sharpens another. Think about what actually happens when iron meets iron. There's friction, sparks, noise. It is not gentle. Solomon's telling you that the friends who make you better are not always the comfortable ones. Real sharpening has an edge to it. Lesson 21. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. At all times. Not when it's convenient, not when you're winning. The friend Solomon describes shows up most clearly in your worst season, which is exactly when the fair weather crowd disappears. Lesson 22 cuts even closer. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, he says, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. listen to that one. He's saying the person who loves you enough to tell you the hard truth, the one whose words actually hurt, may be more loyal than the person who only ever flatters you. A true friend will risk the friendship to save you. A false one will tell you what you want to hear all the way down. Lesson 23. There's a friend, Solomon says, who sticks closer than a brother, closer than blood, closer than family. He's pointing past the people you were given to the people you choose, and telling you that some of them will hold on tighter than the ones who share your last name. And Lesson 24 ties this entire room shut. Walk with the wise, he says, and become wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm. There it is, the plainest verse in the book. You will become the people you walk beside, not the people you admire from a distance, not the people you follow online, the people whose feet are actually next to yours day after day. Show Solomon your 5 closest friends and he'll tell you who you're about to become. Now stack it all up. Money, pride, friendship, lessons 11 through 24, and watch the stakes climbing the whole way. It started with how you handle a few coins. Then it moved to how you handle praise. And now it's standing on the most dangerous ground of all, who you let stand close enough to shape you. 24 lessons in, and Solomon is tightening the circle. Because everything he's said so far has been walking you toward one room. The room behind every other room. The one he warns you to guard with your life. And in that room, the wisest man who ever lived is about to confess that he failed. Before we walk into that last room, let me say one quiet thing. If you've made it this far, you're not here for entertainment. You're here because some part of you is actually trying to live better. Whatever the next thing is that does that for you, keep it close. That's the whole reason books like this survived 3,000 years. People refuse to let them go now. The room behind every other room. But Solomon makes us pass through 3 doorways to get there. And the first is integrity. Lesson 25. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, he says, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. Integrity in Solomon's world isn't about being impressive, it's about being whole, the same person in the dark that you are in the light. And the man who is whole walks without fear, because he has nothing chasing him. Lesson 26. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. Your character is a compass. Build it true, and it will steer you through decisions you can't even see yet. Build it crooked, and it will quietly drive you into the rocks. Lesson 27, and Solomon does not soften it. Lying lips are detestable to the Lord, he says, but those who act faithfully are his delight. He's not grading on a curve. The God Solomon feared cares about whether your words are true. But Lesson 28 is where the mercy breaks in. Whoever conceals his sins will not prosper, Solomon says, but whoever confesses and forsakes them will find mercy. Let that land, because it's the hinge of the whole book. The way up is down. The hidden thing rots you. The confessed thing heals you. Solomon is handing you the secret that every addict, every liar, every exhausted person hiding something finally learns. You cannot heal what you won't admit. Through the second doorway, correction. Lesson 29. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, he says, but whoever hates correction is stupid. That's his word, not mine. He uses the bluntest term in his vocabulary for the person who can't stand being corrected, because that person has sealed themselves shut. Lesson 30. Better is open rebuke than love that stays hidden. And Lesson 31, rebuke a wise man, and he will love you for it. There's the test. Hand a fool the truth and he hates you. Hand a wise man the same truth and he thanks you. The only difference between them is what they do with correction. Lesson 32. Where there is no counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors they succeed. Nobody walks wise alone. The person who refuses every voice but their own is not strong. They're just unprotected. Through the third doorway. Generosity. Lesson 33, and it's almost reckless how good it is. Whoever is generous to the poor, Solomon says, lends to the Lord, and he will repay. Sit with the size of that. When you help someone who can never pay you back, Solomon says God himself signs the IOU. Lesson 34. Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and whoever waters will himself be watered. And Lesson 35. Do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it's in your power to act. 3 lessons, 1 truth. The open hand always ends up the fuller hand. And now the last door. Solomon has walked you through your mouth, your temper, your money, your pride, your friends, your honesty. And now he stops and he lowers his voice, and he tells you the one rule that rules all the others. Lesson 36. Guard your heart, he says, above everything else, because everything you do flows from it. The Hebrew word for heart there is leb. And it does not mean your feelings. It means your command center, your will, your thoughts, and your choices, all in one place. Solomon is saying, there is a control room inside you, and every river of your life flows out of it. Guard that room, and the rivers run clean. Lose that room, and it doesn't matter how good your words or your money or your friendships look on the outside. Everything downstream gets poisoned. And here are the rivers. Lesson 37. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Lesson 38. The heart of a man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Lesson 39. Many are the plans in a heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that stands. 3 lessons, 1 heart. You can plan. You should plan. But hold those plans with an open hand, because the leb that's surrendered to God is the only one that ends up anywhere worth going. And now I have to tell you how Solomon's story ends, because the man who wrote "Guard your heart above everything else" stopped guarding his own. It happened slowly. It always does. He married foreign wives, hundreds of them, from nations whose gods his own God had warned him about. And the Bible says it as gently and as devastatingly as it can be said. When Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart after other gods. His heart, the exact room he told you to defend with your life. He left the gate open. One small compromise, then another, then a shrine on a hill for a wife's god, then another. And the wisest heart that ever beat drifted so far from God that the kingdom tore in 2 after he died. The author broke his own first rule, and it cost him everything. So why would we still read him? Here's why. And I want you to really hear this. These 40 lessons are not the bragging of a man who won. They are the warning of a man who knew exactly how far the fall goes, because he fell. When Solomon tells you to guard your heart, he is not lecturing you from the summit. He is calling up to you from the bottom of the canyon he slid into, with his hands cupped around his mouth, yelling, "Don't come down here. I know the way too well. Let me put it in a room you've stood in. You've handed someone the keys. Maybe to a car. Maybe you've stood in a doorway watching a kid drive off to a life you can't follow them into. And in that moment, you don't give them a lecture. You don't have time. You give them 1 sentence, the truest thing you know, and you pray it surfaces in their memory at 2 in the morning, when they need it most. That's what a proverb is. That's what this entire book is. It is a father who knows he won't always be in the room, packing a lifetime of love into sentences short enough to survive the distance. This is not a book about being smart. This is not a book about being religious. This is not a book about following rules. This is a book about guarding the one room that decides every other room, written by a man who knows precisely what it costs to leave it unguarded. There's one more picture Solomon leaves you with, and it's not a king. It's not a battle. It's a woman in an ordinary house before sunrise. The book closes with her. The Hebrew calls her Eshet Shayil, the woman of valor. And it's a strange way to end a book of wisdom until you see what he's doing. She gets up while it's still dark. She works, she plans, she opens her hand to the poor, she speaks with kindness. She isn't afraid of winter because she got ready for it. She is every lesson in this book: the tongue, the diligence, the generosity, the guarded heart, wearing an apron, living in a real house on a regular Tuesday. Solomon is telling you wisdom was never meant to stay on a scroll. It was always meant to put on shoes and go to work in your actual life. So let me leave you with 3 things to carry out of here. The first is this: wisdom is not information. It's not how much you know. It's chakma, skill in living, knowing what to do with what you've got. You can have 1,000 verses memorized and still tear down your own walls. Solomon proved that. The point was never to be smart. The point was always to live well. The second is for you specifically. Don't try to do all 40. You'll do none of them. Pick one. Just soft answer, the slow fuse, the open hand, the friend you should call back. Pick the one that pricked you earlier and live it tomorrow, before the day gets loud. Wisdom you don't use isn't wisdom. It's just decoration. And the third, this is the one I'd hold on to if I could only keep one. Above everything else, guard your heart, because the wisest man who ever lived didn't lose his kingdom in a battle. He lost it in his heart, one quiet compromise at a time, with the gate left open. The heart you guard today is the kingdom you keep tomorrow. And the heart you stop watching is the one that drifts so slowly you won't even feel it leave. Until you look up one day and you're standing in the bottom of the canyon, wondering how you got there. Solomon knows the way down. He wrote 40 lessons so you'd never have to learn it, so now it's your turn. Earlier I told you to hold on to one, the lesson with your name on it, the one that stung a little. I meant it, and I want to hear it. Tell me which of these 40 hit you the hardest and why. I read them. And if this gave you something worth keeping, stay close. There's a whole book of these we've barely opened, and I'd rather you didn't have to go looking for it alone. The old king blows out his lamp. The words are yours now. Go guard the room.